Okay, so tonight I'm just drawing on an A3 piece of paper. It doesn't really matter what size of paper it is because the drawing is going to be contained within this saucer. And as I was saying earlier, I quite like giving myself something to work into, to fill in, because it's just less frightening than having to do this whole great big piece of paper. So I'm going to start off by just, if you want to follow on with this, if you pop your saucer on face down, I'm just going to draw around it. I mean, this is about as high tech as anything my doodles get. I try and avoid using equipment if possible because not everyone might have it, and also I'm a big fan of things being hand drawn, even if they're meant to be circles. But this is going to be a frame that we're going to sort of follow, and that's the end of my high tech equipment for tonight. So what I was thinking about with this doodle was I was sort of imagining those long distant summer days that do occasionally happen, but when you get to just lie around and not do very much and look up at the sky. And when you lie on your back and you look up, and you sort of, if you imagine if you're on a field surrounded by long grass, you kind of like have this sort of, your vision becomes like surrounded by this miniature kind of forest of sort of grasses and lovely frondy things. So that's kind of, and it's sort of, you sort of feel like you're in a circle because they're all round you. So that's kind of vaguely what I'm thinking about and in this sort of doodle. So pen wise, I've got a range of fine drawing pens. As I always classically say, my favourite drawing pens are the ones that are on sale. So if I can get a pack that's 50p cheaper than another pack, that tends to be the one that I use. So I have no massive preference. I think they're all fairly similar. Usually you want to go for something that's waterproof. However, I have in the past done some amazing things with some very unwaterproof pens. So, you know, if you find some that do run, they can actually be really exciting. So I tend to have a range of sizes available just because it's useful to get different weight and different depth into your doodling. So ideally start off with a kind of medium size pen. So I've got a point 0.5 micron pen here. So that's where I'm going to start. If you've got a 4 or a 6 or something in the middle, so that you can go thicker and you can go thinner. And we're going to try and just get quite a nice sort of flowery, natural, sunshiny kind of line work picture. So, but there's going to be lots of layering. So when you're doing a picture like this, we start off with or doodle like this rather, we want to do the nearest things to us in first, and then slowly go backwards. And we're going to look at the way that things overlap to get a sense of depth, even in quite a small sort of doodle. So I'm going to start off by doing what's going to become a sort of plant or kind of leaf stemmy thing. They aren't, by the way, botanically correct in any way whatsoever. So I'm going to start at the bottom, and we're just going to do a long curve that comes up and then comes round to start off with, like that. And we're going to turn it into something else as we go, but it's like a long sort of curlicue kind of shape like that. And then to make this look more like the stem or something of a plant, I'm going to make it double thickness. So I'm going to give it a couple of mils thick and then just gently follow, gently, slowly, whatever I mean, don't really mean gently, I mean slowly, follow it back down again. So you're just making that into something that could be a stem and not just line. So that's just curled that down and round like that. And again, if it's slightly wobbly and bobbly, it really doesn't matter because it's, you know, a plant, and plants aren't geometrically perfect most of the time. So we're just going to leave that like that. And then I'm going to do a little thing on the top here to make this look like a leaf or a seed head or something. Again, very abstract. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this go into a sort of cone shape in layers. So if you imagine where the Michelin Man, if you remember that little mascot, had those sort of fat tyres kind of making. So I'm going to do something similar to that. You want to watch the first stage and then the rest are all the same. You're just going to do something that's the same width but like a little fat sort of curved sausage like that. So it sits on like that. And then to make it look more like a cone shape, we're going to just do a row of these going down, but each time you draw one, it's going to get a little bit smaller. So a little bit shorter. So each time you draw one, think of it as the sort of cone disappearing down. Down we go until it gets smaller and smaller. And then the last one is like a little button on the end, like that. And that gives us that kind of shape as if it's something curled round, as if it's something kind of like leaf-like. So I've got one of those there. I'm going to do some more of those, but I'm also going to add in some other curlies. And again, I've got to think about my layering. So I'm going to do another one kind of here. It's going to sort of become another kind of planty thing. So it's going to come up, but when it hits this one, you stop there so that you've got it, and you want to restart it on the other side. And if you're not sure how to make it link up, when you draw your pen up, you get to here, lift your pen up, pretend to draw, and then put your pen down again. And that just gives you the exact point you want to kind of draw it round. And I'm going to take that round into a curve. It looks the same as the other one, but I'm going to do something different with it. We're going to bring the stem back like we did before. So again, when you hit that one, you lift up and put it down again and continue that down. And that's going to become, and you see straight away that top one is now definitely in front and this one is behind, and we've got a sense of depth and sort of shadow and layering happening already. So we're going to do another couple of these. We're going to turn them into more like leaf-like kind of fronds. So let's do another one that's coming from here. So again, bring it all the way to that front one, stop, lift your pen up, put it down and bring it round again like that. And we're going to take it back round again, make it thick as we did before. So bring it round, up, down and down again like that. And I'm going to take one now going up the other way. So I'm going to bring it from this side and bring it up and round into a nice curl again. So we've got a nice sort of cluster, and then bring it down again. I do have my rule of three, which some learners will have heard me spout before, but that is that when you're doing a design like this, try and keep your pattern elements to odd numbers. If you tend to have two of something, it can look a bit like eyeballs no matter how hard you try. And speaking as someone that also makes jewellery from time to time, I had once set a ring with two stones and it took ages to do. It looked wonderful until I showed it to someone and she went, "Oh, what a lovely frog." And of course I hadn't seen it was a frog until she pointed out to me, in quite unintentionally, that it was indeed like two froggy eyes. So we'll try and avoid that by keeping to odd numbers generally. So once I've done sort of those ones in, I'm going to do a couple of much thinner leaves to kind of scroll through. So just do a wavy line, take it up and bring it over. And we're going to keep that as a single line, keep it quite sort of thin. We're going to put some leaves on it. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. And because it's a line, it can just cross over the other one without too much problem. And then to make this look more like a sort of leaf, we can then put some leaf shapes going up it. So just almost like a sort of eye shape, I suppose. And eventually we can colour that in black. And you can decide how you fit these together as to what they're sticking behind and what they're coming in front of. Because we're going to shade them in completely, it's quite handy. So you see this one here, I've got it tucking behind. If I wanted to bring it in front, then I can colour it all in black and suddenly, there you go, it's in front of where I want it to be. So it's quite a handy trick, that one, if you suddenly think you need to move something round. Like I could, for example, I've taken this one behind, I could just carry that line across and it would actually look all right. It wouldn't look like a big mistake. So I'm just doing little pairs of leaves, and these can be any shape you like really. You can do heart-shaped leaves, you can do circular leaves, it really doesn't matter. It's just whatever you fancy, but I just find this very traditional leaf shape is quite nice to use. It's, quite nice representational. And when we get to the top, we're going to do just one on the top like that to finish it off. So that's another plant to add to our kind of planty zone. And same with this one, because we've got them quite congested here. Look, I'm going to just colour that leaf in black there, just so that you don't get any confusion. I'm not going to start the leaves on this second one until a bit further up, because otherwise we're going to get too many and it's going to get a bit confusing. So you can always angle them so they don't overlap if you don't want them to, and bring them up along the top like that, coming up towards the top. And you can make them get smaller as they go to the top, and you can make them get bigger. It depends on how you feel. Either way will work. And then just one last leaf on the top. So there we go. So there's that. So I'd like to get a slightly bigger flowery kind of shape going on. So I'm going to do just a wiggly stem that's going to come up to about here. And then we're going to do a bit more of an expansive sort of fantasy flower head. So I'm going to bring it up. Now the more you get on here, the trickier it gets just to get your stems to kind of grow up, because you have to keep thinking about which stem you're going in and out of. So just take it slowly. Just think of bringing a stem up, and then when you hit a plant again, just lift it up, put it down again. Lift it up, put it down again. And we're going to bring this up, and I'm going to slightly curl it into the centre like that. So it's not a very dramatic line at the moment, it's just a very sort of simple line. So I'm going to make that double again. So as long as you do the same thing with your second line, it'll work out. So where you stop where you stopped before, and go across where you went across before, and we'll be fine. So this is going to be a stem. And before we get to the actual flower bit, we're going to put a little like feature on the top. It's going to help make it look like a sort of flower. So I'm going to do like a little bean, which is going to look very odd at the moment, but it's like a tiny sort of baked bean. Right, so to do this one, the flower head, I'm going to swap to a thinner pen. Now this is a very simple flower head, but it's quite effective. So what we're going to do is like a sort of fan shape of lines coming up. And the first thing I'm going to do is kind of do the sort of first one and the last one to kind of define the shape of the flower. So it's just one coming up like that, and then one coming like that. And then we're going to fill in. So that kind of gives us again our border that we're going to work to. So we're just going to do, and with these lines, if you can give them a slight flick towards the end. So instead of stopping, you just slightly flick your pen, and you get a nice little fade out. So the line is not too chunky and sort of, I'm going to say brusque, but that's not the word I mean. It doesn't stop with a sort of brutal end. It's got a nice wispy kind of feel. And that starts to give that sort of slightly filmy kind of floaty feel, a bit like a dandelion head. And once you've done some strokes like that, then you can go back and do some more in between. And each time, if you try and start in between the ones that you've done before and sort of break up that space, and sometimes you can sort of do two because you've got a bigger space, you'll notice we have this lovely effect that where the lines come together, everything starts to look a little bit darker because the lines are closer together. And as they spread out, you've got more white paper showing through. So we get a sort of sense of lightness. And it's quite a useful effect for getting shade and light into things. So once you've done sort of maybe that many, you've got sort of quite a few, we can go back and then we do some more. So we again try and see if you can get one to go in between the white spaces that you've left from the last time round. It doesn't matter if you slightly miss and overlap, because it just creates a bit more denseness around the bottom of the flower head. It's just see if you can set yourself the goal of getting a line in between each one that you've done already. And you can see how it starts to build up and give that flower a bit more reality, a bit more solidity. And if you just let your pen flick out, it keeps the ends nice and light and stops them getting too kind of spiky looking. And then sometimes you can do is just to add in some little tiny dots towards the end, just floating dots. It's quite hard not to do them in a line, but I'm trying to do them as sort of cluster in and among those top thin little flicky strokes. And that kind of starts to look like, it looks a bit petally, and it looks a bit like sort of cow parsley or something. I'm sure it's got a proper name, but we used to call it cow parsley. So it's just got that feeling. And it doesn't matter if your lines are even like that or if they're uneven, because sometimes actually I think I've done a bit too square on that one. I think I should probably be better to get a few longer ones in just to kind of break it up a bit, because we're going for quite natural forms, so we don't want anything too geometric in this one. Later on we'll do some other surfaces, but this is obviously quite a natural one, so you can just break them up and then with some slightly longer strokes and add some dots in. So that's sort of one sort of form of flower. And I want to get another one kind of here. And what I quite like about this circular edge is that our pattern doesn't have to always stick inside this edge. It can sort of disappear as if this was like a window that we're looking through, like a porthole. So I'm going to do a larger flower here, but I want some of the petals that are coming off here to kind of disappear where they hit this line that we've got. So I'll show you what I mean as we go, but we're going to do something that's sort of based on a chrysanthemum-ish. I mean, it's very, very random. So I'm going to start with the centre first of all. I'm not doing a stalk up to it because it's going to be a big flower head and the stalk will be hidden by most of the petals. So to begin with, I'm going to just do some circles and cluster them together. This is the very sort of basic starting point. So I know it's going to be very tempting to do like a daisy like this, but we're going to go slightly bigger than the daisy. So just little circles, but try and keep them so they're in a round-ish sort of cluster. Just so that we have think about one of those dark daisy centres you get, those lovely black-eyed Susans, I think they're called, and there's moon daisies and those ones, and they have those really nice sort of intense dark centres like that. So once we've got the baubles or the little balls drawn in like that, we're going to go back in and make them a lot darker because they always have these really sort of rather dramatic centres. So to do that, I'm going to go into each one and start going round and round, but I'm going to leave a little white highlight in the middle. So you don't have to colour it in completely. It's not colouring in, it's just doing a kind of, instead of doing an outline, it's like an inline, but you just leave a little bit of a white spot in the middle. It's sort of like sort of a spiral, but you don't go all the way in. You just do a few rounds the outside of your circle, and then you've got a little white. And I'm leaving the little white highlight in there so that we don't just have a completely dark mass. We want something with a bit of texture. And the way that we see texture is that we see where light falls on it and where shadow comes on it, and that's how we see the world around us. If we leave a little bit of white like that, it kind of gives the impression that those are bumps sticking up. You know, if you were to reach out and touch them, they'd be like little ball bearings, and they'd have a sort of roundness or at least a surface to them. And that's how we get that kind of feel. And it doesn't matter if your lines aren't tight together and there's a bit of white paper showing through little spirals. It just adds to the texture. It's really fine to do that. And in fact, it works better if you don't have completely black filled in circles, just leaving those bits of white like that. So hopefully we've got a little sort of clustery centre. We're now going to do some petals coming out of that. Now, a bit like we've done with the overlapping technique here, we want the petals to overlap, and we start off with the ones, as it were, at the top of the front of the flower. Would you say front? Would you say top? Well, anyway, the first surface of they're almost like surfaces, like layers. So you've got the top layer of petals, and then you get more and more coming down, and they overlap each other. So the first ones that we do are not going to be overlapped. It's a good way of sort of practicing the shape before we have to start thinking about them overlapping each other. So it's a very, very simple shape. It's just do a line out first, so that's like a sort of wiggly line like that, then draw it back down, so you've got one side of the petal, and then draw the other side, and just make sure, if you can, that you've got a slightly pointy sort of tip at the end. So, and it doesn't matter if your line wiggles out fatly and it goes back in again, or it stays quite skinny. With this sort of thing, it really doesn't matter at all. So I'm going to kind of do them like sort of north, south, east and west first. So we've got, these are our kind of top petals. But the only other thing to think about is when they hit this circle that we've drawn, I can just see mine, you can just see mine on the camera there, they're going to stop dead, as if that was like as if they were on an actual plate. So that means that when I take my sort of line to here, I'm going to stop it because it's hit the circle. And then when I do the second sides of that's sort of like the crease in the middle of the petal. So when I do the second sides, I'm not going to come together to that point. Again, just watch this bit for one if you're not sure what I'm saying. And you bring that up to the same, like that, to the edge of my plate. And then on the other side, like that. And so your eye immediately starts to imagine that, or your brain starts to imagine that this petal is there, but it's disappeared off into the other side of the way we can't see. So we'll do another couple of these. So you can make these as wiggly or as straight as you fancy. Depends how dramatic you want to be. I put a little wiggle in that one. If you do want to put a wiggle, just follow with your line again, so that you're sort of mimicking that wiggle on that petal. And again, see that one's disappearing off the page. So I'm not going to see that, the tip of that one. If I do one on this side, I'm going to see all of it because the plate edge is not there. So I can curl that down however I fancy doing it and bring it round again and back to the centre. And it's quite useful that petals have fantastically evolved to have this lovely margin through the middle, because it makes it much easier, you know, to sort of like, you can plot where you're going with your centre line first and then come back and add the thickness. I find it works much better. So there we go, there's another one going up there. And this one it's going to come to a point because again it's all inside our magic circle. So I'm going to bring that round and to there and back to the base and round. I can never decide whether it's easier to go from the top down or the base upwards, and I kind of find I do both. So I think it's just going to be whatever you feel is going to work for you. So we're going to do a few more, but you know, next couple of ones we're going to start making them overlap. I think if you do too many just sort of going round, it does tend to have a kind of Catherine wheel like feel, and I want to get some overlapping to happen. So to do that, say I want to get an overlapping petal kind of coming up here, I'm going to do my centre line, but I'm going to curve it round, and when I hit the petal that's already there, I lift my pen off, mimic it across and then bring it back round. So that's the centre line for that one. So if I do this side of the petal first, just come round, again lift up, put down at that one, and then you're going to see just a little squeak of that one round there and down like that, and then suddenly we've got that overlapped feel, like if you look down onto the head of a chrysanthemum or something in the garden, it's got that kind of feel. So let's put another one sort of somewhere in around here. And it's nice about this because they shouldn't be kind of all static and sticking out in a perfect clock face, because they don't really, that's not what plants do. They do overlap and have all these nice wiggles and squirrels. So I'm going to have another one that's going to come down here, and kind of where I'm aiming at is to kind of have a circular formation in that all the petals are kind of roughly ending up in the same circle. But again, it can be much more scrappy and it doesn't have to be in any way perfect. And then I can just follow that line round, and you see we're starting to get overlapping happening, and then eventually you're going to fill up the middle of your, so we can't start the petals absolutely at the centre that we've drawn, but that doesn't matter because we just bring the centre line of the petal out from wherever, and when it comes down again you can see just where it touches the edges of the petals above, it just disappears under like that, and we start to get this nice sort of layering feel. If we were being really arty, we might change to a lighter weight pen to do the lower petals, because that has the effect of making them look further away as well. But we don't need to go that far because we're doing a doodle, but if you wanted to, equally you could. So I'm going to bring some more of these curving round, and we're just going to build up the flower head, just moving round and filling in all the gaps, and you can decide how curly your chrysanthemum's going to be, you know, or how regimental. I always remember growing up, it's a very British English thing, isn't it, to have front gardens with sort of perfectly arranged flowers in them, which nobody ever goes and sits in ever, because somehow if you sit in your front garden that's weird, but what you always used to be. I remember front gardens where I grew up, and there was always one chap who had this sort of absolutely regimented garden with rows of tulips and daffodils and everything with exact spaces in between each one, you know, and all arranged like a sort of like a sort of jigsaw puzzle, as if they were on a military parade. And it was a kind of, when you actually thought about it, it's quite an odd thing to do to plants that are very natural and like to do their own thing. But he was the sort of person that would tie them to stakes. They all looked rather sad, despite being beautiful colours. They all looked like they were in prison. Not my kind of gardening, but and I do remember ridiculously. I mean, I think I can safely give you his name, as this was when I was a child, so we're going back to the 70s. So he was called Horace Embleton, and he won Best Garden every year, but it wasn't my sort of garden. But this is definitely a Horace Embleton garden. This is much freer, so we're getting these lovely ripples, and we're just going to keep building up the layers of petals. And each time, if you draw your sort of central petal line first, it acts as a nice guide. So hopefully it'll help you, stop you from getting too confused. And of course, the more that we get in, the less we actually have to draw, because we just start to see little bits of the petals poking out among the other petals. So each time you draw one, they come a little bit, you see a little bit less because they're lower down. But hopefully you should be building up a lovely chrysanthemum type flower head. And again, every time you hit the edge of your circle, just stop it dead, as if that circle is cutting it all off. And it's amazing how your eye doesn't see that as a cut off flower, it just sees it as a flower that's sort of leaning over and disappearing off into the roll below. So I won't do a huge amount more, because I think I've just about covered this as an idea, but hopefully you are seeing how you can build this up, and you are at complete liberty to add more and more layers to your flower and add other sections. But we're going to move on to another part of the design now, so that we've got our sort of flower head there. And then I want to put in here a kind of bud that looks like it might become one of those. So to do that, I'm going to do like a sort of fat, sort of teardrop shape, but like an upside down one. But I want it so it's just tucking underneath this big flower. So I'm going to start at the top here, and again it's got to tuck under a couple of those lower petals. So just like a sort of teardrop shape like that. And then we'll put some stems in. So a bit like we did the little cap round there, we'll add a little sort of collar that we'd see on the bud, but we're not going to see it on this one. And then we'll we're going to do some lines on this bud that look like they might be going to burst into petals. So I'm going to take lines coming up to the point like that. And if you can see, they just slightly curve out. So and the left hand curves to the left and the right hand curves to the right. And then if we keep on giving that slight curve either way around, just avoiding that lower petal, it starts to hopefully make that look like it's sort of fat and might be a bud kind of shape. And then we can bring that all the way up, and that last two are almost straight and they just sort of tuck in, and that's sort of hopefully given that a kind of bud-like kind of quality. So let's see where we are now with these. Right, okay, so I am going to come back and we're going to add stalks and things, but sometimes these things you have to come back at different points to add them, depending on what's going on in the rest of your design. So on this side here, as we've done this sort of flower on this side I'm going to put in like a sort of long feathery kind of thing that could be a feather maybe, or a plant that looks like a feather, you can decide. So I'm going to start with a feather. I'm going to do a long central kind of spine line first of all. So I'm going to take it from somewhere in here. So again, you might just want to watch this if you're not sure. Again, I've got to layer it, so lift up, put down, and then just bring this line all the way up, sort of following the circle, but not really, just curving round with it. So I've got that line all the way through there. And if you're the sort of person that wants to be terribly symmetrical, you're welcome to use the edge of the plate as a guide, but I'm just kind of free handing that one. And that's going to be the central quill of our feather to kind of work from. So again, we're going to describe this with sort of some quite simple line work that's just going to sort of layer, but it's one of those things that as you build it up, it's going to have a more complicated effect just by the number of lines that are going to be there. So I'm going to swap to my slightly smaller pen, like a 0.2 if you've got one, or 0.3, something. And if you haven't got one, don't worry, it's not a huge issue, but it's just quite useful to get a sort of slightly lighter kind of feel. So I'm going to start at the tip here, and the first thing I'm going to do is a shape that's just around that central quill. So I'm going to do a slightly sort of wobbly shape like that, and then maybe another sort of bit like that. And to make that stand out a bit more, I'm going to colour that in. So immediately I'm going to swap back to, I'm going to use a brush pen just to quickly darken that up. But it can be quite daunting using a brush pen live, as it were, because they're quite soft. But I'm just going to use that to colour it in. You might find that the harder nibbed pen is more your favourite. But I just want to say you can see that shape that we're going to be working on. And then we're going to kind of do some lines that echo that for a bit. So just come up and round and bring it up slightly higher. And then another one like that. So we've just got like some that are echoing what we've done before. And each time they start a little bit lower and finish a little bit lower as well. So, and again, it doesn't matter really what shape you draw. It's just a nice sort of swirly shape like that. And then if you want to, we can add some little curls into the end, so like little sort of curly shape like that, or a little dot on the end or something like that. But I kind of find you tend to get with feathers, you tend to have this sort of end section where the plumes come round and off the top, and then you kind of get more kind of side sort of like branches side by side. So we can then start by mapping those out by doing one like with plenty of space between them, sort of going down almost like the branches of a tree like that. So we're just going to take it down, and then we're going to do this sort of pattern but kind of round each one of these as a kind of central point. It's going to get more complicated when we come down here, and we're going to have to sort of go behind the drawings that we've already got, but we're going to work up to that slowly. And it's not hopefully complicated, and it's not going to be difficult patterns. It's just got to be aware of like this, where you're kind of, you know, got one thing in front of another. So we can take this all the way down. And the other thing to remember is, of course, we've got this side of the circle here. So where our lines hit this circle, they have to stop dead to kind of get this nice sort of circular composition to work. So for each of these side shoots that you've done, you start off with a little black shape, just like, it doesn't have to be the same, but a similar kind of idea. So like a little teardrop shape like that, I suppose you'd say, a little sprout. And again, as I've got the pen in my hand, I think it won't be too long just to colour that in. You don't have to colour it in at all, but I just find it easier for seeing where I'm going. I've got that as a nice memento. Memento? I suppose I mean memento. And then bring some echoing lines coming either side, working their way up that central shaft. Like that. So that they're almost in like little, they come together again at the top this time. You can see they're sort of coming together to make like a little feather within a feather, and then you can just put maybe a little curl on the end, and you'll notice that feathers are almost segmented like this, and they sort of, you can imagine pushing your finger down a feather and it's sort of slightly splitting, and that's the kind of feel that you get. And the line work is quite simple, but I think it's quite effective, even though it's just quite a sort of it's not, again, not a deeply complicated pattern, but it's quite you get these nice rhythms where the lines separate when they come back together. So again, if you go on to this one, again, just a long thin shape, something like that, that's going to be like the core shape in your feather plume, and then that's going to be coloured in dark, and This is obviously quite a slow way of doing it. I probably should have grabbed another pen, but I haven't. We can colour it in a bit better later. And then again, just take your lines, kind of filling in, moving up and down the stem, and every time you sort of come up slightly higher, and you'll notice you're going to get a gap on one side more than another, and that's fine, because then you can just kind of take your lines off into space and maybe give them a little bit of a curl or a shape until they're blending in to the section above, and you can put little curls inside and sort of work your way around. And you should hopefully, because you're always moving upwards with the lines, so are feather quills, they're always moving upwards, so hopefully you're going to always get that kind of feathery kind of feel going on. So if we bring it down here, so what you can do is, once you've got the feeling of it, is to go down to each of your spines first and put in your central motif shape. Once you feel you've got the hang of it, or you know what you're doing, and then you can get your heavier pen to fill all those in like that, and you can sort of get into the rhythm so you know where you're going each time. I'm just going to touch up that one there that's got a few. Colouring something in with a 0.2 pen really is, I mean, people do it, but goodness me, you need to be dedicated to do that. I'm on various pen art groups on Facebook, as you might imagine. There are loads of them out there, and there's one pen and ink group, and it's one of those ones that makes me feel, I like seeing what they do, and occasionally I post there very nervously, but it's full of very intense men who do sort of A3 drawings of beautifully rendered architectural subjects in perfect stippling, and it takes them sort of 6 months to do each drawing, you know, and it is absolutely incredible, but also slightly terrifying. And also, I think I'd get bored. I think there's anything I could draw for I think if I was drawing the same thing for 6 months, I don't think I could cope with it. I think I'd sort of want to throw it out the window before I could get it finished. Right, so so now I can sort of see where my sort of feather centres are and where I'm kind of going with this. So then I can come back and build up the lines, and it's amazing how it's just a very, very simple line. There's no complicated interweaving really, but you can get some really lovely effects as the lines move apart and they come back together. And it's just that old thing of, like, the closer they are together, the more they're replacing the white paper with black pen, so they get a darkness, and then as they spread out you've got more white paper showing, so they look a bit lighter. It's endlessly fun to sort of see what effects you can get, but hopefully really simple to achieve. And again, just when you hit that pencil edge of the far side of the paper, just remember to give way to that, so that you just see it starting to just disappear off in the sort of edge again. And you can always throw in little curls, and you can think, right, well, are those tips, these ones here, look, they all seem to decide to go underneath each other just to get a bit of sort of overlapping, and we can get some more shapes working in amongst that. Again, just pop in a few little curls just to make something different happen, and see where your pen wants to go with those. Mine's going to kind of go underneath and over the top, underneath again like that, so that you get like a sort of overlapping feel. But it's so surprising how such a really simple pattern that doesn't have any sort of complexity can become really sophisticated, can do something really attractive and unusual. So I'm going to come back up from this one, and you sort of go back down and you start one and you move up again and down, up and down, you know, depending on how the lines take you. And there are no rules, so you can decide to come away from a shape, you can decide to have one curling under another. It's really up to you. And if you find an effect that you like, that you think, oh, that's really interesting, go with that, see where that will take you. It doesn't have to be the same. In fact, you want everyone to be distinctive and have their own little twists and sort of additions in it. So you can see how we're starting to build up this sort of shape. As we come down here, we're just going to have to think about the other things that are growing in the garden and whether we're in front of them or behind them. And so at the moment, I think with that plant there, we're definitely behind it. So you can see just where I'm putting these strands in, just leaving that, making sure that they're going behind each of the leaf. The other advantage of doing the stem on those ones as a thin line stem is you can just go over the top and it doesn't matter because your brain sorts it out for you. They're clever like that, brains. So I'm just going to keep coming down so that they're all sort of sorted, and we're just going to get into this bit and then we'll have a look at some of the things we can do, because it's surprising. It's starting to look relatively full, but there's so much scope for getting more into that picture. Trust me, we are only not even really halfway through yet. There is plenty more to discover. So again, I'm just going to take this up, and I just want to get some of those to hit that edge so that they are disappearing. So we continue that sense of it being right, sort of more like looking through a porthole than being literally on a plate. So we'll bring some of these up round here, and these ones from on my one are definitely going to be touching the edge like that, just sort of working their way round, and we're hopefully getting that feel of really establishing where the edge of this world is and moving up and around. And then we're going to coming down to here. We've got the last section here to kind of, or I have on my one anyway, you may have gone a bit further, and anything is fine, just to sort of like move through like that, and then just sort of work it in between the leaves. Take your time, it doesn't have to be a race, so just keep moving the lines and thinking about whether they're up or under. And remember, I haven't coloured in the leaves on this plant, but they are going to be coloured in black, which is quite handy, because if you do get one wrong, just colour the leaf black and it'll magically sort itself out. It's quite cunning like that. So as I get lower down, I'm just going to tuck these sort of in behind the one in front, and it'll start to look more like the way a feather sort of comes to its end. And I've just got one more kind of bit on this side here, so I'm going to try and find a position to draw that where it's not going to mask it completely, but just bring that edge. But again, it's hitting the edge of my round world, so it's just going as far as that line and stopping, and then the last few are just kind of tucking in like that. So I've basically got my feather kind of mapped out there, and hopefully you've can see kind of how that's sort of going. But we've got more stuff to do. We've definitely got more stuff to do. Do not fear. So I want to get some more into here. I'd quite like to get another one of these flowers in somewhere, though I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe I can fit one in here, but it's trickier to do it when you've got to do these flick lines, but you've got things in front. So that might be a bit hard work. So I think we'll definitely put another kind of flower shape in. So for this one, this is kind of like another leaf shape. With this one, I want you to kind of imagine that there's a stem here first before you draw, and then I want you to do a triangle, but don't join the point up. So you've got a triangle like that. So that we are here we are, and it's got the point is sort of missing. And the reason the point's missing is it's going to have a sort of stem coming through that point. So I'm going to put the two sides of the stem in like that. So you can see how where that point was missing, I can now bring my stem through. It looks like it's sort of looks at the moment like it's going into a hole. I'm going to make this a double triangle now. So I'm just going to follow the shape again. Round like that. So I've got one there, and then I'm going to take my stem up a little bit further. And of course the other way you can do it is to draw your stem and then stop your stem and then put the triangle around it. So instead of this time when I do my triangle, it's going to come across the top here, so it's going to cut off that stem there, and then the triangle is going to come down and stop at the stem. I've got to underlap that plant. There we go. So that's sort of like starting to bring that shape through there. And then I'm going to make my triangle double again. This is why video in the classes is a good idea, because you can always watch it back again later if it's sort of like getting a bit confusing at this point. And then I'm going to do probably a third one, a triangle down here, but again it's sort of tucked behind this curly thing here, which we're going to sort out in a minute. With this triangle I'm going to give it a slight angle so it's not quite as square on as these ones, because I want to get a slight curve happening in the overall shape. And then I'm going to make it double again, leaving the bottom open at the moment, and then I can bring the stem down and down again, and then I'm only going to see a little bit of that triangle kind of matching up to it. So it's useful to know how to draw this kind of shape in lots of different ways, because it depends on how you get to it, as to where you are, as to what you need it to do. And then we need to put something on the top, so I'm going to give it a curl on the top. So again, just take one side and bring it round in a kind of curl. Remember, this is all going to be black, so we can just draw on top of that and it'll work itself out, because it's going to be behind. And then draw it back round again like that. And to sort that side out, I'm going to go back to my thicker pen and I'm going to get these leaves in of these spindly plant. I'm going to get that drawn in darker so that this sort of makes sense now. So if I then draw that in, and as soon as I draw those leaves in, they immediately come in front of that shepherd's crook flower that I've drawn, and all is right with the world. The perspective is restored like that. So I'm just going to bring those down so they're definitely darker. And it's lovely when you think, if you step back and look from it, you'll see how with these solid black shapes that your eye will kind of connect them, almost like joining the dots. So when you think about getting your viewer to look around your composition, think about where you put dark shapes like this, and it'll sort of lead you up and through to all, and it will sort of connect together. It's not something you sit and plan unless you're a professional sort of fabric designer, but it's something that it's fun to sort of notice and design the ways that your eye will just connect the same shapes, and it's a way of sort of moving through a pattern. There we go. So I'm just going to do all these in while we're here. There we go. So I'll just get these last ones that are overlapping the feather. Oh, I've missed two. There we go. All right, so that sort of like brought those in. So let's finish on these sort of strange triangular one. We will finish that off, but I'm going to colour these triangles in dark as well, so they look like, I don't know what, but shapes. But just, can you see the way that petal is overlapping? So we just want to make sure we don't colour the top of it in, and just colour either side of the stem, and that gives us a kind of in and out feel. Just to give that a bit more shape. There we go. And fill all of these in, so we've got that shape going there. Okay, so we're going to bring that area is going to go into something else, so I'm going to leave that for the moment. I want to look at these curly shapes that we put in, and again we're just to do very sort of simple treatment to kind of give it a more like sort of frondy kind of feel. So what I'm going to do is just do some lines that come between these ones and start them off really quite close together, and then just bring them as they come up the shape slightly wider apart, So it's just as they sort of, the shape, the gap, as the gap between them comes wider, make the gap between the lines slightly wider if you can, and it just seems to reflect the curve that you've got going on, and it works really nicely. And again, think about the overlap. So once you get that overlap happening, you've got to just work those shapes behind the ones in front, and then as you go into that little corner, they get closer together again, and you get more of them packed in really tightly together, and it just sort of gives that nice, almost like harp string kind of feel. And then we can do something inside this one similar. I mean, I think what I'm going to do actually is put another little small one inside here, because like that join is covered by the little plant sort of growing out from there. I think that would just make it smaller. I've done a bit wobbly there, but you know, like I said, we never mind these things. So just got to take those lines so that they come behind that thing that's in front, the stem that's in front. But they don't have to be of a particular angle or doing something. They don't have to be the same angle as the ones above, just wherever it's comfortable to draw them, really. I'm just going to fill those lines in. And again, it's amazing how just really simple lines are so effective. And then as they come down into that little corner, they're going to get really tight and close together. And as they come round, you can decide how you want to do them. I'm going to slightly angle mine, so they're kind of coming more from one position, but you don't have to do that. You can change them in all sorts of different ways. And as they disappear down into that sort of under his chin of that shape there, they can get a bit closer together and a bit darker. And it just adds a strange sort of rhythm to it, and it does sort of make them like harps. Then we've got to decide how we do kind of this one in here. So I think I'm going to put another frond poking up here, because I don't quite know what's going to happen in this space, how they're going to change direction. So it's the good thing about, again, doodles, if you're not sure how to make something work, put something in that's going to make it work. And so I'm just going to do as if there was another one poking out from behind there. Look, and that looks like it's always been there, and that's always what I intended to do. And then I can bring the lines just coming up into that section around there, like that. And I've just got this one long hair, and I'm going to bring them, oh, that was a funny noise, bring them all the way up through here. So here we go. I don't know if they're leaves or they're kind of, I mean, they're not anything really, they're just doodles. But one of the things I love looking at is when you see, if you've ever gone out into the woods in the spring and you see the ferns starting to unfurl. I have a bit of a passion for ferns in my garden, mostly because my garden is very shady. So they're the thing that does the best in my garden, so I've learned to love them. But in the spring you get these lovely curly sort of like, I always think they look like apostrophes kind of coming out of the ground, where they're all sort of curled up and they slowly unravel into the enormous fern leaves. And this is kind of what this feels like. It doesn't look like it, but it's kind of where I'm basing this kind of idea on. So there we go. So there's that sort of filled into that corner there. And then I think we'll get some, maybe some sort of curliness happening down here. I haven't forgotten about the stems here. I just haven't put them in yet. Because I wasn't 100% sure what we were going to do when we got down there. So let's get some, I think we'll do some kind of leaf shapes. So, but again, remembering the edge of the circle, I'm just going to do ones as if they were cut off by that edge again. So let's just do them as sort of double lines and then bringing them up the side. So you've got to imagine that you're just doing the points of leaves and they're kind of overlapped, a bit like scales. So behind here, they're going to be behind these sort of harp shapes. So they're going to come up and down like that. And then so you're just going to see a little bit of them poking out, and their tips have gone underneath the harp. So you're only going to see like half of them like that. And then when they get up here, I'm just going to take that down into them. They can come a bit, we'll see a tiny bit more of them maybe. Like that, and a couple more. So they're somewhere between leaves, somewhere between scales, like that's going to be the last one there, because I then want to put in the stems of these sort of chrysanthemum type plants here. So you've got one just coming through like that, and it's going to disappear down behind the leaves. And there's going to be one coming from the big plant here, and I might put a little bit of a curve on. So again, when I'm doing something like this, I'm going to do this of imagining drawing. So I'm imagining my pen's above the surface, so I'm not touching the surface. I'm bringing it down in the curve I want to draw, and then, oh, it's got to the edge of that petal. So put the pen down, bring that curve round, hit another petal, lift the pen up, but just continue that drawing, and then bring it down. And you'll find that that will really help you to continue that line like that, and then you see your brain links those up completely, and you imagine it in your brain tells you that that stem is going behind. So do the same thing again, but it's a little bit easier when you've got one to follow. Just try and get them the same thickness when they either side of that petal, and there we go. That's sort of given that stem kind of idea. And then I think we should probably add some decoration into those stems so we can tell they're that particular breed of strange flower. So I'm going to grab a thin pen again at 0.2, and I'm just going to put I've got all these points going up, so I'm going to do points coming down to meet them. So just like a little chevron pattern like that, just coming down the stem, because that's, again, it's going to add a little bit of shade to it, or tone, but it's also giving it a pattern like that. And then we make sure that we do the same pattern on this stem, because then we know they're related, because then that's definitely the bud of the flower. And again, you just see the nose of that chevron poking out from under that petal, and then just work your way down the stem. And as I always say relentlessly, these patterns don't need to be complicated. It's the overall effect. The more that you do, the more that you build up, the more intense the surface gets, and the more complex it looks from the outside. But if you just take it in sections and do each little bit at a time, the complexity sneaks up on you and you don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to have a quick slurp of my tea, so I'm going to mute for 60 seconds or less just to do that, because I don't think you want to share my slurps. There we go. That was provided by my lovely assistant who's off camera. Right, so I'm going to also then put some texture onto this front sort of like lantern-y kind of shape as well, because I want that to stand out a bit against this sort of background. But because I've got this bit here where I've got all these quite white shapes, what I'm going to do is colour this in black and then let it fade it out into a pattern so that it doesn't get lost in these sort of harp shapes here. So I'm going to start off with black pen from here, just carefully watching that edge where it's going into the circle, and then just take that across, because I want this to be, I don't want it to get too lost in the background. So again, but I also don't want it to be black all the way up, because if I do black all the way up, you're going to lose this nice pyramid kind of effect. So I'm going to take it all the way up just to there, and then we're going to fade that into a pattern so that it's not so stark. At the moment it looks like it's sort of, you know, one of those cats that looks like they've trodden in a pot of paint, but I'm just going to leave that as a straight line, and then I'm going to go very close to it doing little straight lines, and the first two are kind of almost touching the black. There's hardly any gap between them, and then as it comes up I'm going to slightly increase the gap as I go, and again it doesn't have to be perfect, but hopefully as we go up we're going to get that gap being a bit bigger. And again you can really see from this that as the lines get further apart, it's like a tonal effect. So down here your lines are really close together, and if when you look back these don't look close enough together, just go back and stick a few more in between. You know, no one's going to know. The doodle police aren't watching us, it's fine. So just slightly overlap that just to get that transition to be nice and sort of smooth. And then as we come up, our lines can stay further apart and almost till they disappear, until disappearing into that white one. We should get a nice transition then between the two, and that's a tonal effect just using pen light, not using any pencil sort of shading at all. And then I think on this, the cone that we've got going on here, what would be quite nice would be if we sort of do the reverse thing. So the first couple of rows, we kind of don't do anything. And then the sort of third one down, we're just going to put some lines and just give them a slight curve as they go round. So they curve that way towards the left on the left-hand side and towards the right on the right-hand side. I always say, imagine there's like a magnet on each side and it's slightly pulling your lines more in that direction. Then as we go down on the next row, just try and get more little lines with a tighter gap. And so that way we're getting more lines, less gap, more darkness. You can just start to see that shading really nicely. And then you've guessed it, as we go down, we just do more lines closer together and pack them in. And then we start to get that darkening kind of effect in reverse. And again, the actual line itself is dead simple. There's nothing complicated, but it's just how we use it and how many we put into the space that we've already drawn. And that very last bit there, look, we can colour that in so it's almost dark. So hopefully we've got this nice sort of transition, and that's a technique you could use on all sorts of bits, like where you've got your triangles here. You can leave that top triangle being quite sort of white, but then as you come round the sides, just start adding again some more lines, getting them closer together as they come towards that stem. And you can see how that started to really make that look like you've done quite soft shading, but all it is pen lines. And then here as well, start from this side, tightly packed lines, and then spread them out, open them out, let the paper show through, and you've got something that's adding to that feeling of things overlapping. And that's how you can get really quite subtle shading effects just by using your pen lines again. So as we come round on this triangle, we come tight, tight, tight as we come down towards the stem. And then the other way, we do the other thing. So I always think of it as going downhill, and now we're going uphill. So again, tightly packed lines there, and then open them up a bit. And we come up, up, and then just sort of stop. And then that's starting to give that nice tone of shade. And let's do something similar with the stem as it goes through. I think as we come up here, as you hit towards that edge there, again, there would be some slightly tighter, close together lines there. And then slowly let them, or quite quickly, I suppose, let them open out and let some air back in. And that will start to give this a bit more tone as well. And it's just things like that. So there's all sorts of moments like that where you get overlaps. You can add in these little tiny details, and it just starts to make it look more kind of 3D, like there's more stuff going on. And this is without using any of the colouring pencil tricks that we haven't got to yet, which we will have a look at later on. So let's again come in around that one. And we've got these lovely leaves here, and they've got this nice sort of space going on between them, so we can think of some design ideas to go into that. So we can start by putting sort of like a margin and maybe a line and a dot. Again, they're very simple, but it's quite effective to kind of bring some pattern element into this. And this is kind of, as I say, what we do. We just keep on building up. Every time you think you've got a space, think, well, what can I get into that space? What can I add into that to break it up and add some more pattern and some more elements? And I always sort of say, don't try and plan 3 patterns ahead. Just think of the next bit you can do. You know, don't worry about the grand design. Just think, well, I'll do this bit in here, and I probably won't be able to fit anything else in. That's it. I'm going to stop. And then you think, well, actually, no, I've done that bit there, so I'm going to move on and do another bit over there, and then I really will stop. And that's where the day goes. So you just keep on adding those little moments in. And I think another thing why I like doodling so much is that because you're generally working in fairly controlled media, so you're working in pens and you're working on paper, you know, you can do a little bit while you're having a cup of tea, and then you can leave it for a day and you come back and nothing has changed. It hasn't dried up on you. It hasn't run. It hasn't done something weird. And your pen will just carry on working, unless it's run out, of course, but it'll just carry on working quite happily for you. So you can kind of keep it going throughout the week. So I think we want to get something else coming in here. as a kind of idea. So I think I'm just wondering if we can get another one of these sort of big blousey kind of numbers kind of coming. If I bring it through here, then we're going to tuck it behind the feather. So let's see if we can get that to work. So again, we've got to think about the stem first. So I'm going to bring a stem sort of like that sort of shape. So I'm going to start in the space and just bring that line through, up and down again, curl it round, and then I can go across that black plant without any problems. Stop at the harp leaves, then come up and just bring it through onto that end there. So we've got that sort of, as a sort of like, you know, guide, and then we'll do the same again to get another stem sort of through there and bringing it round and lift up, and then just do that last bit sort of round there. Yes, so we've got that sort of stem in there. So again, we've got to do this kind of like bean shape to be the bottom of our flower, like that. And then I'm going to bring these lines up, but the first, instead of going across this feather, I'm going to bring it up, and then as it hits the feather, it's got to stop there. So that's going to be kind of, again, my underlay, and then I can bring this one up there. So I've now sort of controlled where I'm going to do my flicks. So with these ones on this side, I'm just not going to flick them. I'm just going to bring them up and touch them right up to the feather line, because I'm going to imagine that the sort of flicky bit is hidden behind the feather. But as soon as I've got room to do a few flicks, then I can do some just sort of coming up there like that. So you can just sort of, and then we can build up in the same kind of way. So again, on this side, just do the lines, but just don't flick them. So you're going to be more controlled about where they end. And you can decide each time which bit of the feather they're going behind, and bring those up, and then we can just flick those very last ones up like that. And you can always go back if you see you've got too much of a white gap. You can go back in and add your pen in later. And you see we've sort of now we've sort of got a nice pair of those flowers now, and then we can just sort of add in some little dots, you know, and you're only going to see a few at the top because the rest of them are kind of behind the feather, you know, they're kind of tucked in behind there, but that's got another one in, and that looked like it was going to be quite complicated to do, and actually it was quite straightforward, so that's always good to know. Right, so we've got about why have we only got 5 minutes left? How did that happen? Right, so as ever, these things, it really does amazing. It is amazing how the evenings drift disappear out of view. So I'm going to do just a couple of really simple ones that are really good for adding in a volume to your kind of doodle. So a very simple one is, again, do another kind of like black line flower. So just bring it, you can go right across what we've already drawn, and then just sort of do a bobble on the end, and then some little clusters of bobbles like that sort of coming. So these are ones that you can do on top of what you've already drawn, because they're completely black. They go right in front of, you know, they bully their way across whatever you've drawn already. But you can add those in just to add some more kind of textures and layers. So like over here we can do another one that can come right across, and you start to really get that nice overlapping feel. And it's very simple, just again a little line going up to a dot, and you can make the dots bigger, you can make the dots smaller, but you can start really overlapping and building up more and more kind of layers. And then just things like with the chrysanthemum flower, a little bit like we did with some of the tonal shading lines, we can come in. So where you've got your overlapping, if you want to make a bit more of that and make it look a bit more, we can just put a few little shading lines just where those petals overlap. And it doesn't take much, and it doesn't have to be always soft pencil. It can be quite a graphic approach like this, but just using a few little tiny lines, and that starts to bring some depth into those sort of overlaps. It just starts to exaggerate them slightly. So where you've got the petals underneath, you can just do a little bit of just little thin lines. Use the thin pen, and again, as soon as you feel you want to, just fade them out. If you want to get them darker, just put more close together, and it starts to add some more depth to the flower, and it just gives it again. And the same with the little bud that you've got here. We can just put some pattern lines so close together at the bottom, and then fading out as you come to the top. And then I'm going to go the other way and just fading out again, and like that, and just keep on building them up. And that starts to create a sense of depth, because as you get the lines closer together, you get more shadow. If you do the shadow near the bottom of something, it helps to make it look sort of slightly rounded like that. And one of my favourite stalwarts, if you ever sort of got a bit of a pattern, you're not sure where to go with it, you can always put some circles in. Circles are a great infiller. So you just fit some circles and let the circles fill the space that you've got. So if the space is getting more narrow, pop in smaller circles, and they will sort of automatically fit the environment that you're fitting them into, and they just gives them a really nice rhythm because they fill up the shapes that you've got going on there. And then to make them stand out a bit more, you can go back and colour in around them, and it just gives it a bit of circle interest. And later on we can turn them into pearls by giving them highlights and shading, but for now we'll just keep them as sort of circles like that. And I'm not going to colour them all in, but you can see how just by doing a little bit of shading around them, it makes them pop, it makes them stand out a bit more. And I think we could probably have, you know, maybe up here, maybe we could have do a little lozenge shape and give it a little face and some antennae, and I don't know what sort of bug it is. Not quite a butterfly, it's a bit chunky for a butterfly, so it's just a little stripy bug of some sort flying around and in the sun. And then you can draw the trail like that through the sky just to show where he's been, like that. And we could probably put some more of those in, but there's all sorts of little things you can add and little details and more layers you can get to, particularly with the feather. Along the middle here where you've got your fronds marked out, if you then get a lighter pen, a thinner pen, and just do some halfway ones and let them flick out and disappear up a little bit like the blousy flowers, that starts to again give that little sense of shadow that you get, because a feather's plumes all come down to that central spine and they kind of curve down, so you actually get a tiny bit of shadow down towards that area, and you can just use that little flicky pen motions just to get a bit more depth in. And it's amazing, you can go over, you can think about all the different areas that you've got here, you can go back in and add tiny more and more intricate details to kind of build it up. But I hope that overall we've got this lovely sense now of a kind of lying in the grass in the summer, and the way you've got that sort of circular vision and it's just all full of summer, which eventually I suppose we will get back to, storms forgiving, storms allowing. So there we go, that is where we're going to draw it to a close.